We are at the castle with Tony. Good to see you this morning.
Nice to see you.
It's awful green in here.
The best place to be. Yeah.
Now, we're going to talk about gardening. It's that time of year. The most important thing is to get your plants up and going and then get them out in the garden. We can learn something from everybody, correct? The old timers.
That's how I've learned everything I know. Yeah.
So how did you get started in this?
Well, I've been an agriculture teacher for about 22 years now, but before that, I actually worked on horse farms. I managed a horse farm for 14 years.
Cool.
So when I started teaching, I was definitely an animal science kind of girl. And when we moved from the eastern part of the state to Mercer County, the job opening there, in my interview, he said, well, can you run our greenhouse?
Sure.
Sure was my answer. I said, well, I never have, but I'm sure I can figure it out. And from there, I just fell in love with horticulture. So, and it was a really good way to engage students, for one thing. So lots of hands-on learning, but I got to be a student as well. So my first year in 2007, I was grasping at straws, never took a horticulture class. I mean, didn't pay attention if I did. And so I had to get those old timers, and they came in, and one in particular came in and just held my hand that whole first season and showed me everything. And from there, you learn to make mistakes and change. And so now it is 15 years later, and I couldn't imagine not being in a greenhouse. I want to, as far as giving tips for people at home, I think you just have to start with quality products. So the media you use, don't go out in your yard and dig up some dirt in the back of your yard. So go out, they make germination mixes. And so we buy, it's just a little bit finer than what you see as we transplant in. And it's the same ratio. It's got the sphagnum peat moss, it's got the perlite and the vermiculite, the same as that, but it's just ground up finer. And it's sterile. So you're not bringing you're not introducing any pathogens. So it's giving your seeds the best chance. And also start with a quality seed. How we start seeds, so you'll see I'm picking things out. There is bigger debris in there sometimes. Sometimes the peat moss gets in clumps. Again, I'm kind of a stickler for detail, so I spend a few seconds and just kind of make sure, because these seeds, some of them are microscopic. I mean, when we started begonias and peppermint, you can hardly see them in your hand. So, but we're gonna do kale today. So I love kale, I love all kinds of varieties of kale. I love the restaurant loves kale. So what we do is we just make rows. You don't have to. I get asked all kinds of questions from my high school students. They'll say, well, why do we do that? And I'm like, because I was taught that way. That's, right? That's how I was taught. But you could broadcast them on here. So we just make little rows. The rule of thumb is you want to plant them as deep as 3 times the size of the seed. So if it's a teeny tiny seed, you're barely putting them in. I think that's a common mistake. People want to plant seeds like you're doing it in the garden and put inches down, and that's a mistake. You want to really put them on the surface and just lightly cover them if they're little. So we'll make about 10 rows in a tray, and we'll just take and you just dribble them in there. They make tools that you can use. Handling them isn't probably best practices. Like you want to keep the sterility as much as possible. You're working with sterile soil, and your seeds are sterile, and now I'm gomming them up with my hands. These bigger seeds, it gives you some control.
Now, if you notice the noise, that's just the fan in the greenhouse, which there's a lot of fans in here.
It's a lot. Ventilation is a key in the greenhouse. So we just go through there. I try to do maybe 15 to 20 seeds in a row this size, because you want to optimize your time for one thing, but also the expenses of what you're doing, the trays and the soil. And you're not going to get 100% germination anyway, so then after we do that, we just cover them. I'm just going to show you the way I do it. I just take it and cover it where I can control it more.
Time-wise on that, how long is it going to take it to start seeing something?
Yeah, they're all different. So again, rule of thumb, the smaller the seed, the longer it takes to germinate. The bigger the seed, the faster it goes. You put a squash seed in, right? And in 3 days, it's germinated, and you feel very, successful. These will probably take 7 to 10 days. Some plants take up to 3 weeks. So that's why when we make these tags and put them in everything, the date is one thing we put on there, because I need to know if we had a crop failure. I need to know if I'm going to give up on the plant. So if it's only been in there 10 days and on it, it has a 21 day, I'm like, we're okay. Yeah. But if it's squash, it probably was and I'm going to throw it out.
Batch.
Yeah. the greenhouse is magic. The greenhouse lets a lot of sun in, the humidity is just right, but you can do things at home. You can use saran wrap and just wrap your tray and you just want to keep it humid. So that you just want to mimic what the greenhouse is doing. Obviously it needs a little warmth, it needs some sun after they germinate. So as long as you're giving the plant what it needs, you can do it at home. You just have to be, the management's just a little higher. So again, I haven't watered this since we put it in, and I think I looked at it this morning. I think this is broccoli, and I think we actually have some coming up. Yeah.
And how long has that been in there?
The 14th. So just
Oh, wow.
3. Yeah. So this makes me happy. This means we're going to eat well this spring. We'll have lots of broccoli.
Now you initially, I'm sure, watered this fairly good, and then put the top over.
Yep, and haven't watered it since.
Wow.
So it just keeps, and you can see when you see that condensation. You're doing
working.
good. You're working. You know, people at home have a tray, always have holes in the bottom of it, and then you can bottom water them. So like you don't want to take your hose and just, you know, they're
Right.
little fragile things. So I have a tray over here. We just literally float them in the water, and the water will go up from the bottom, and it doesn't damage the plant at all, but it gets it to the roots. So it really is one of the better ways to water plants.
What are some of the common mistakes that people run into? I remember as a kid getting so excited and putting out these little trays, and I remember some plants going straight up, and they all got real wispy and thin, and they just kind of laid over.
How I explain to the kids is they're looking for light.
Yes.
So if you're restricting light, they're going to grow as tall as they can. They're on survival mode, so they're going to grow towards light. We'll even get trays out of the propagation chamber, and they're all growing to the side, meaning we got to turn it or get it out. But yeah, a leggy plant is really tough to do, and if we do get them, when we transplant, we have to fix it. We have to bury that stem, which just makes our job a lot harder. This tray is actually a tray of, I'll just brag on my students for a minute, but this is a tray of zinnia seeds that we actually saved from last year's zinnias in the garden. So we, when the season was over, we just cut their heads off. We put them in a big Tupperware thing. We kept the moisture down. We didn't want them to rot, of course, and get moldy. So we kept some ventilation in it. But when they were completely dry, we just stored them up in the refrigerator, up in the barn, pulled them out, and I said, kids, let's just do an experiment. Let's see if any of them even germinated. So we just literally broadcasted it. You can see how heavy the tray is. We just broadcasted the seeds, and they just came up like gangbusters. The rule that we have here in the greenhouse is if it has the transplant, if your seedling has true leaves on it, then it's big enough to transplant. So the true leaves are the leaves that come out. Let me get this little filler out. The true leaves are the ones that come out in the middle. All plants have these ones on the side. They're called cotyledons. I give the analogy, it's like your baby teeth are going to fall out, but this is the true leaf of the plant. And you'll be able to see, it'll be like kale will look like kale in the middle. Marigolds look like marigolds. So you'll be able to see the difference. But once those true leaves are up, you're going to have enough root development that it's going to transplant well. So this is an example of a lot of stem, right? So the students will try not to get that one. They'll try to get the shorter one. But we just take a tray, and it's a 1203, meaning there's 12 3-packs in here. And so we'll give each transplant, we'll get it out of here where it's really competing with all of its other brothers and sisters at this point. So we're gonna get it out and give them as individual trays so it can grow. So we just plant the entire plant in there, that whole stem, get it right in the middle. I tell them I have a little bit of OCD, so they have to get it right smack in the middle. They have to look nice on the table. And we just go through, and that's how you transplant them. We transplant the entire stem, no matter how big. So if you have, like we were doing eggplant one time, and the stem probably was 4 inches, we had to put it in a bigger pot. You just have to, set yourself up for success.
Put that whole stem in.
Put the whole stem. And the stem will grow roots. There's root hairs on it, so you'll get a stronger plant in the long
Wow.
run. Yeah.
Microgreens.
Of them.
What are they?
Microgreens are really the entire plant. We eat them at about 5 days old. We eat them from the germination instead of let them go to the whole plant. So this is a tray it's called a mild mix, and it's got some arugula and kale, some spicy mustard in it, and they sell it, and we grow it on these little bamboo mats, and the restaurant uses a lot of microgreens. We would see them come in all the time, and I'm like, I want to try to grow those.
So you just dampen that? Put the seeds out?
Yes. So there's only a few tricks to it, but yes, you dampen the bamboo mat. We did some peas over here, and we did them on soil. So again, the media, you can use soil, or you can use some like a recycled material that they sell online. They have some hemp mats that they use. But the key of it is just get them contact with whatever media you put. So we literally put weight on them when we first seed them, like those are pretty new. and we put weight on them and darken them out for about 3 or 4 days, let them germinate, and once they germinate, once they start, like these peas have started, I just took it off this morning, then now they need light. So we take it off, let them give them a little light, and in about 7 days, you've got 3-inch microgreens. The nutritional benefits are that plant has every benefit of the whole kale. So that little bitty thing, when you put it in your salad, it's just nutrient dense.
All right, I think you're having way too much fun. We got to cut this out. We cannot be having this much fun.
Yeah, I get paid to do this. It's great.
You know what? I want to thank you so much. We could go on for hours here. I really, and then have good information. Maybe we need to come back when you're doing something different.
Okay.
Tony's Tips in the Garden. Thank you so much.
Thank you.